We'll call our meeting to order for October 14th, 2024. We have our roll call.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll call the roll. Gina Avent,
Here.
Mariah Bishop,
Here.
Ralph Carson,
Here.
Philip Jefferson,
Here.
Jehan Hodges, Sherry Phillips,
Here.
Michael Voiland.
Here.
That's 6 members present.
Okay, thank you so much. Our invocation by Mr. Voiland.
Thank you. No need to bow your heads. This is just a reflection on some thoughts. On October 3rd, I shared with you all an article of the same date from the New York Times. It pointed to what some could surmise was the weakening of building codes and standards in North Carolina, actions that may have exacerbated the infrastructural and residential damage and the economic toll to residents and business people living in western North Carolina. I am certain that arguments could be made both supporting and opposing that viewpoint from the Times. But regardless of any debate, I'd urge that we do 2 things. First, as we meet monthly and consider proposals for land use development and change, let's trust that town planning, public works, and legal staff are not only aware of state building, stormwater, and land use codes, but also that they will let us know when they believe such codifications may not be protective enough of our townspeople and the living and economic investments those people may have made or will make. And secondarily, as commission members who may know certain areas and neighborhoods in the town quite well, let us not hesitate to ask informed questions about proposed modifications to Garner's topography and stream flow hydrology. Getting good answers to our good questions may help to limit adverse impacts on our neighbors in the future as extreme weather events may become more common.
Thank you so much for that. We know that our hearts go out to our western North Carolina residents as well as those in Florida and other states. Let's keep those in our minds and thoughts. I'd like to take a moment before we adopt our agenda to recognize Mayor Gupton.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Jefferson. I just want to tell you 2 things, one that you don't hear enough and one that you've heard so much you're tired of hearing it. But the first one is thank you. You don't hear that nearly enough. You folks are here working for the good of your community instead of being home with your families and friends and doing all the things. We can't thank you enough. We don't take you for granted. The second thing that you hear till you're tired of hearing it is Garner is growing. Have you heard that? Everywhere you look, it's exploded. You know, living in Wake County, for over 5 years, it's been consistently one of the fastest growing areas in the entire country. And you are right in the crosshairs, and your neighbors and your friends are right in the crosshairs. And I know you hear from all the time. You hear from them all the time. What about this traffic? What about these people coming in? What are you going to do? I wish we knew the answer. But all I know is that we cannot do nothing. We have to do something. You've heard it said, and I'll say it again, if Garner never issued another building permit, if we never did another rezoning, we would still be overwhelmed with traffic and growth. Our neighbors are all around us. They drive through. They're here. We're part of the growth. We have to control the growth. We have to have smart growth. We have to make good decisions and get out ahead of it. And you're a critical point in this. My one request from you is I would like to hear from each one of you individually. I would be very happy to sit down with you for 15 or 20 minutes, anytime, your convenience, coffee shop, lunch, after work. If you'll just shoot me an email and say, hey, what's a good time for you? I would really like to sit down and make sure that the town council is listening to you as individuals and trying to figure out what can we do to make your job more pleasant and more effective. So please reach out to me at your convenience anytime over the next few weeks. If you see even that afternoon or the next morning you have a chance, just shoot me a note. I really would love to sit down with each one of you and just hear from you what we can do, what the town council can do to help you be effective and efficient. Thank you, and keep up good work.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thank you
Mayor.
so
We
much.
appreciate that. We need to add Ms. Hodges to our roll call.
I'm here.
Yes, we will make sure she is noted in attendance.
Okay, thank you. So the adoption of our agenda is next. Are there any adjustments or changes that need to be made to our agenda before we adopt it? Seeing that there are none,
Isn't it moved to November?
we have, well, I think we probably get to this. We have one item that has been moved to next meeting. Do we need to do that, adjust that now, or do that when we get to it?
Yeah, just when you get to it,
Okay,
we'll just make a note.
all right, we'll do. Okay, so if there are no other changes to the agenda, we can,
Do we have a motion?
a motion to adopt our agenda.
I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you very much.
There's a motion on the floor to adopt the agenda. I will call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
Mariah Bishop,
Aye.
Ralph Carson,
All right,
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jihan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips,
Aye.
Michael Voyland.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes. The motion is adopted.
Thank you. We have adopted our agenda. Our meeting minutes from our August 12th meeting, are there any adjustments, changes, addendum that need to be made to our meeting minutes per your review? If there are none, do we have a motion to adopt our meeting minutes from August 12th?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as recorded for the August 12th meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Avent. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second.
There's a motion on the floor to adopt the presented minutes. I'll call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
Mariah Bishop,
Aye.
Ralph Carson,
all right,
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jihan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips,
Aye.
Michael Voyland.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes. The minutes are adopted.
Thank you very much. Old and new business. The first item on our agenda is CZMP 2306 Pool Drive Fuel Sales.
Yes, and so for the commission tonight, we are requesting from staff, as well as from the applicant after talking with them. There were a few discussion points that came out of the public hearing. And so we are just asking for more time to be able to confer with the applicant as to how they would like to address some of the concerns that came out of the public hearing before it comes to y'all for consideration. So we would, again, just to keep everybody on the correct or the known path of this, we do want to, have this on your agenda since it did come out of public hearing with the referral. Just so that everybody can stay abreast of where it is in the process. So if you wouldn't mind, we would just ask that you go ahead and do a motion to defer this to the next meeting in November.
Okay. Do that. Do we have a motion to defer CZMP 2306 to our November meeting time?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Okay, so
I'll second.
Second, Mr. Carson. Thank you so much. We have a motion and a second.
There's a motion on the floor to defer to the November meeting, pool drive fuel sales, and I'll call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
Mariah Bishop,
Aye.
Ralph Carson,
All right,
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jihan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips,
Aye.
Michael Voyland.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you. So we will move on to our next item on the agenda, GZ 24001, Parkway Drive.
Good evening, Commission. Now you get to see me presenting my first case to you tonight. Tonight we have GZ 24001. It's a general rezoning of 2311 Parkway Drive. So the applicant for this rezoning is the town of Garner. The owner of the property is Pulte. This is a general rezoning request submitted by Garner to rezone 0.28 acres from Wake County Residential 40 watershed to rural agricultural town of Garner. The property is at 2311 Parkway Drive. The rezoning is aligned with our annexation petition of the same site. This parcel is to provide emergency access, fire access into and out of PDMP 2001, that exchange at 401. It will be gated with a knockbox lock and not accessible to the public for vehicular use. Having this property zoned and incorporated into Garner will allow the town to enforce use for emergency access only. As stated, the existing zoning is residential 40 watershed, Wake County. It's primarily residential of nature, that zoning designation, with some commercial industrial uses, but the current use of the site is vacant. The surrounding Brookwood neighborhood is low-density, single-family residential. That exchange at 401 planned community below to the south is a mix of single-family and multifamily homes. And then Terran Apartments are the apartments under construction along Abbott's Mill and 401. The property is not within any activity centers, although there is a neighborhood activity center to the southwest corner of Exchange at 401 along US 401. Our proposed zoning for this site is rural agricultural. We chose that because it's most similar to the existing Wake County R40W zoning. There is no intent to upzone or downzone the property. We just want to maintain rough equivalency. That's why we chose rural agricultural. There's no intent to develop the site besides providing that gated emergency access. Overall, the RA zoning for Garner provides less permitted uses than its current Wake County zoning. We did host a neighborhood meeting where staff identified 34 properties within our notification radius. We held that meeting here, August 22nd, here at Town Hall, but nobody showed up. So no one was in attendance. There's no neighborhood meeting packet. And since there's no site-specific master plan included with this general rezoning request, we're only using the comprehensive plan to evaluate for overall consistency. So the framework consistency, we found there's 4 growth framework criteria that we were able to evaluate with a general finding of strong support. The zoning district criteria was rated negatively because rural agricultural zoning does not fit within the neighborhood character crosswalk. However, we believe that the RA zoning still best resembles the current Wake County zoning of the parcel. Given the existing and surrounding neighborhood, other rated metrics showed strong consistency, such as prevailing development pattern, typical street cross-section, and the block sizes and patterns crosswalk. We did not find any land use community character criteria to evaluate because this is only used for emergency access. It's not a site that's developed otherwise, so that is not included. Just some maps from the Garner Forward plan showing the site, how it fits in with the land character type, and the development intensity map. It did come to public hearing September 17th. There were no comments from the public given about the rezoning. Council did question why the permitted use table wasn't limited to just a few uses with the proposal. We responded that the general rezoning is the easiest, most efficient process to take for this parcel, and any concerns with the non-residential permitted uses in the RA zoning generally require a special use permit, so that still provides oversight on any uses of the site. We do have a draft consistency statement included, as well as your 4 options tonight. And we have a draft motion to accept the consistency statement. The next steps tonight, you're going to find your findings of plan consistency, make your recommendation to approve or deny, and we will send it to town council next for finding of reasonableness and decision to approve or deny. So that's where the presentation ends tonight. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Any questions or concerns that we have? Okay.
I have a question. Will this, impact the homeowners anyway? Like, for example, will it produce off any smells or anything?
No. So there's going to be that gate there. There's going to be, I believe it's a non-paved access road. People can use it to walk through, but it's not going to be vehicular traffic except for emergency vehicles. So it wouldn't be any additional smells or sounds besides the occasional emergency vehicle. And this is just to provide more connectivity to this site and through to other parts of town for emergency vehicles. It's likely not going to be used all the time anyway.
Okay. Thank you for that question. No. Okay. Well, I guess this is the time. Is there any comment or questions from the public? For or against? There are none.
And just to give you a little additional context, because I know the neighboring project that precedes, I think, even before Thomas was here, even though he's been here a while now, the adjacent project does have kind of this back corner, so to speak, where there are more than 75 to 100 homes that otherwise only have one point of access. So whether it's our UDO or the building code, there is a requirement there that you do need to have an alternate means of access in case that one access is blocked. You don't want to have that many homes cut off from having emergency vehicles being able to get back there to service somebody. So that's what it's for, and it is restricted only to that kind of vehicular accesses for those fire vehicles and EMS trucks.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Does anyone have anything else to add? Well, if there is no other discussion, is there a motion on the floor for us to discuss or move to vote?
I'll make the motion. I move that due to the unique use of this parcel and that in absence of any strong non-supporting comprehensive plan criteria, other than the zoning district choice and an otherwise strong level of consistency with the plan's growth framework, that we approve GZ-24-001.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carson. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. So is there any other discussion now that the motion has been added? If there are none, I believe that we are ready to vote.
All right, there's a motion on the floor, and I will call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
Mariah Bishop,
Aye.
Ralph Carson,
Aye.
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jehan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips,
Aye.
Michael Voigtland.
Aye.
With 7 ayes, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you so much. We have passed this motion. Next on our agenda is CZMP 2307 Bethel Green.
Hi, I'm back again. Good evening, Commission. Tonight I'm also presenting CZMP 2307 Bethel Green. So the applicant is Foxfield Land Partners. The owners are Thomas and Jennifer Cox. This is a Tier 2 conditional rezoning request to rezone 138.52 acres from residential 2 to residential 8 conditional for the development of up to 322 single-family detached units. The site is on the south side of New Bethel Church Road between Glen Creek and Oak Manor. The zoning conditions restrict the range of permitted uses and add commitments above and beyond the requirements of the UDO. The current zoning is R2, residential 2, which is low-density single-family homes, encouraging high-quality development and open space protection. The current uses of the site, there is a single-family detached home, and otherwise the rest of the site is vacant. The Lower Swift Creek Conservation Overlay District does limit single-family residential development to no more than 30% of impervious surface. A mix of R2, R4 conditional, and RA surrounds the site. As the mayor mentioned, and all of us know, this area is undergoing increased development, several residential projects under construction, in review, and in the process of application. Water and sewer are available and will connect from the adjacent Oak Manor development, which is on this side. The neighborhood activity, there's a neighborhood activity center to the northeast where they're building that roundabout at Ackerman, White Oak, and Hebron Church Road. There's also a neighborhood activity center to the west on Benson Road. This area of the community consists of a mix of vacant tracts, single-family neighborhoods, and some of our remaining agricultural tracts. So since 2015, this area has been transitioning from low-density rural agriculture to suburban developments and suburban densities. The proposal is a residential 8, R8 conditional. They're narrowing their request to 1 out of 18 possible uses, only single-family detached homes. Collectively, they're proposing a maximum of 322 dwelling units. 206 of those are 45 feet wide lots, 120 feet deep, which is down from their first proposal of 236. They're proposing 104 52-foot wide lots, down from 122, and they have added 12 80-foot wide lots, which are new product. Their total unit count of 322 is at 2.32 dwelling units per acre, which is down from their 328 and 2.37. So as we go down their list of conditions, they're proposing no more than 2.5 dwelling units per acre. They're proposing a minimum 1 acre neighborhood recreation activity center with a pavilion, fire pits, outdoor gathering space, a minimum of 500 square feet covered. These elements of the neighborhood recreation amenity center shall be completed prior to the issuance of the 150th CO. They're proposing a minimum of 3.5 acres of common greens, pocket parks, playgrounds, and they have spread those out throughout the neighborhood. Improvements to each area will include at least 2 of the following elements: play lawns, tot lots, picnic tables, dog parks, fire pits, etc. You can see the list there. The play lawns would be a minimum of 1/4 acre each grassy area. At least 1 active open space shall include a playground. Improvements to each active open space shall be determined at the preliminary subdivision plan in keeping with the stated intent of each provided on master plan and acceptable to the planning staff. They're proposing a covered mail kiosk with required parking, and that's going to be closer towards New Bethel Church Road in their common green area. The development shall include 45% HOA owned and maintained property, which does include active open space, passive open space, and common areas. Those areas can include tree preservation, riparian buffers, floodplains, stormwater control measures, and active and passive amenities. They have proposed a network of paved private and public greenway trails to help create links between all their open spaces. They have a minimum of 5,000 linear feet of private and public trails. On the master plan, in the staff report as well as the paper copies given to you today, they're demonstrated in yellow and orange respectively, private and public trails. The final locations will be determined at subdivision plan review. All the homes will have 2 or more finishes on the front. Lap siding, masonry, shakes, board and batten are examples. The materials will be cementitious, lap siding, board and batten, shake and shingle, so that will be that fiber cement material. Although they are proposing vinyl windows, shutters, PVC, solid trim boards with their decorative elements and corners. They are proposing a minimum 12-inch grade separation from the average grade along the home's facade. And the exposed foundations will be clad in masonry or stone veneer at the front and side elevations visible from the right-of-way. All the homes will have 2-car garages, minimum of 20 by 20 feet, 1,500 square feet, 8-inch minimum eaves on front, rear, sides, 4-inch minimum eaves and rakes. For secondary roofs, of course, gutters do not count towards the requirement in the minimum eave. They shall have more than one ridge line of the roof, a covered front porch minimum of 5 by 5 feet. Garage doors shall have carriage door hardware or windows, a patio deck, screen porch of at least 100 square feet, and shutters around windows on the front elevation. In addition to the covered front porch, all street-facing entry areas must include one of the following: side lights, transom windows, craftsman-style paneling or glazing in the door, windows with a facade face will be utilizing siding materials set in full trim or decorative sills and pediments. Non-decorative front porch columns will be 6 inches minimum in dimension. All homes shall have articulation in the side elevations, including at least 2 windows on each floor, and 2 of the following, such as side entry, additional windows, 8-inch brick stone water table. You can see the list there. In addition to the carriage door hardware or windows, the street-facing garages shall provide a minimum of one of the following: either a 2-foot setback of garage from the overall front plane of the building, or a recessed vertical break in the front elevation, or a change in roof pitch to provide visual separation. 10% of the homes shall have first floor primary suites. No front elevation shall be the same in its form, not just its finishes, on 2 adjacent homes or directly across the street. The development is within the White Oak Bryan corridor impact area for the White Oak Road Developer Agreement, and they will contribute to the cost of the corridor work, and that work will be performed by others. The proposed perimeter buffer along shared property line for 5020 Altamont Court, excluding the overhead power line easement, shall include a fence. The proposed development will assist Glen Creek HOA with signage saying no construction traffic to be placed on the Glen Creek Trail entrance on Wren Road. And New Bethel Church right-of-way dedication and frontage improvements at 2000 New Bethel Church Road shall be completed prior to the issuance of the 150th certificate of occupancy. That is the existing home of the Cox family at 2000 New Bethel. They did propose 2 new conditions since it went to public hearing. I'm going to read them. I'm sure they're going to explain better if you have questions. They are proposing a minimum of 10 residential restricted medium income affordable housing units. They will be constructed on site, sold, and based on an 80% AMI for the Raleigh metropolitan statistical area. There will be a restricted covenant. They'll be deed restricted against each affordable housing unit concurrently at this close of escrow upon the sale of the home. Prior to recording the plat, the final lots, the developer will submit documentation about this zoning condition. The floor plan and selection of unit size, bedroom size will be at the discretion of the developer. And in respect to location, no more than 2 affordable housing units shall be permitted on any individual street. So they'll be spacing that out throughout the neighborhood. And their other new one is the connection at Altamont Court shall be restricted as a one-way exiting Glen Creek with a traffic restricting bump out on the extension of Altamont Court. They're also proposing a mini roundabout will be constructed at the proposed intersection of Altamont Court within Bethel Green. The developer agrees to keep the connection to Altamont Court closed until it's required to open. This is a picture of the entire master plan. I know you have a couple paper copies, a much larger one that you can see. Overall, the proposal, as we said, is 138.52 acres of R8 conditional. The lot count of 206 for 45 width lots, 104 for 52-foot wide lots, and 12 80-foot wide lots. That is 322 units, 2.32 dwelling units per acre. Their master plan includes 13.9 acres of open space required. 25% must be active space. There's a combination of conservation and recreation space in their open space. As far as conservation, includes riparian buffer areas and conservation buffer areas. And for recreation, you have qualifying open areas, amenities, pedestrian trails, and the new segment of public greenway. This is not in a watershed protection area. It is subject to water quality, nitrogen, and quantity requirements. Mr. Boylan, they're proposing 4 SCMs, and they will be connecting to existing water line in Oak Manor. The sewer lines will be extended to adjacent and upstream properties per Raleigh water policy. Now, Jeff is going to speak to a couple slides in regards to transportation of the area.
Thanks, Thomas. As I'm sure you all are aware, this part of town does have limited means of ingress and egress. At this point in time, primarily that happens from White Oak onto Hebron Church, short diversion onto Ackerman, although that will be redone with the roundabout. Ackerman will have its own intersection with the roundabout, and Hebron will as well. Of course, the other point of access for folks is New Bethel Church Road at NC 50. If you wanted to, you could meander down Bryan Road, again from White Oak. And eventually, we do hope that Ackerman will punch through and make a connection with 50 as well. But this did provide us with a pretty good little case study of being able to look at existing traffic counts as they are today, coming through one or the other of those 2 points, being Hebron or New Bethel. And so we wanted to test a few things out and just see if some of the assumptions from some of the national organizations, like the Institute for Transportation Engineers, if some of those things make sense for Garner. And I think what we found is that they do. But just to give you a little more information, this did require a TIA. There was an early assumption of up to 333 dwelling units that would have generated 3,052 trips on the average weekday. Of course, that's come down now a little bit with the lower number, but that doesn't change the outcome of what's recommended as far as the traffic that's being generated by this development. Of course, we have the roundabout underway. Almost every intersection improvement that you could think of has probably already been done out in this area. We've added turn lanes at the various intersections, both right and left. So there's really not a whole lot left to do except just to try to increase the capacity by widening and making sure that there actually is a place to turn at every possible point that you might want to. So the recommended improvements here are just on on the main road coming in would be a 100-foot dedicated left-hand turn. That will be at Squirrel Oaks Lane off of New Bethel. And then coming from New Bethel, from 50, there would be also a dedicated right 100 feet into the main site access point. So again, just creating some additional traffic turning capacity at the development itself. So again, staff did look at the adequacy of the future road network in the area. This was first done at a very, very high level in the previous version of the comprehensive plan. So not this most recent Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan, but the plan version before that. And what the consultants found at that time was that we probably needed to keep the densities a little bit lower in this area. At the time, they recommended anywhere from 2.5 to 5. Even that was probably pushing it just a little bit. But definitely not anything high density that was going to create a lot of trips for a very small area. So we know that generally the Institute for Transportation Engineers says that a single family home will generate about 10 trips per day and a townhome will generate about 7 trips per day. Since we just have townhomes and single family in this area, apart from the high school and the elementary school, it felt like, again, a good place to kind of test those numbers out and see how they came. And we did find that it was consistent with our locally available data. They actually might even be a little bit high. So if nothing else, we feel pretty confident that the trip generation rates that ITE recommends are suitable for Garner and may actually be just a little bit aggressive, but we can always err on the side of caution. So when we looked at the existing counts, you see here in the graphic, we knew that there were 6,171 actual trips coming through at New Bethel and 50. This was actually counted just in September of 23. And we also had 6,681 at Hebron going out to White Oak. So that definite point in time, we know it takes into account whatever was built prior to then. So it was actually fairly easy for us to go back and look at how many homes had been completed. We applied a vacancy rate, did all of that kind of fun stuff just to try to make our numbers as realistic as possible. And so what we ended up coming down to is that with everything that is already approved, or we have 3 projects that are still at various points of review. We have the homestead at Bryan Farms, which you've seen earlier. We have this project here at Bethel Green. And there's one more that will probably be coming to you maybe in the next couple of months at the corner of Clifford and Bethel. By the time we factored all of that in, we figured that there's about 4,300 more trips, theoretical capacity, in the roadways that could be there. And so when I do speak about the theoretical capacity, we know in general that a 2-lane road where you can turn everywhere you need to turn should be able to handle about a little over 18,000 vehicles per day. So we took that capacity for both. So we started with about 36,000 trips between the 2 points. We took 10% off right off the top, so we'd have a contingency and be a little bit more conservative in our numbers. And so then we deducted everything else out of there, and by the time we get through all the projects that we have in the pipeline, our theoretical capacity would be about 4,300 more trips to allocate. What this does not represent is anything about how intersections function. This is just capacity in the roadway itself. To look at those intersection impacts, you really have to be a transportation engineer, of which we are not. So I want to be very upfront about that. This does not make any representation about how individual intersections would function, but just from an overall road network capacity, this is kind of where we're at. And so this graphic actually shows that analysis a little bit more. We see the 2 points that were studied in green, and this area in red is kind of the traffic shed. Anybody who lives within that red outlined area is probably going to go through one of those 2 points. So you can see kind of geographically all of the homes that we took into account that were built by September 1st of 2023 or are going to be built in this area going forward. The red represent the intersections that were not studied at this time. So Ackerman Road coming out to White Oak, as well as Bryan going out to White Oak. So we anticipate that, the people who live here along Ackerman in the various subdivisions, they're probably going through those 2 right now as opposed to the others. So again, we just tried to break up what we were counting for the 2 intersections studied versus the 2 that we weren't. And then of course the black dot represents where we hope Ackerman will eventually punch out to 50. And here's just a summary little graphic kind of how that capacity breaks down, those 36,000 trips. You see that 10% contingency right off the bat in the light blue. But when we looked at what was existing by September of 2023, about 35% of that capacity was accounted for in current trips. So if you think about that, that's 6,000 plus 6,000 and change. It's about a third of the total 36. We have another 30% that we expect has already been approved. And then this 13% represents the 3 projects that I mentioned that are in the hopper now. So that's Hebron, Homestead at Bryan Farms, Bethel Green, and the other project at the corner of Clifford and New Bethel. So once we take all that into account, we've got about 12% left, plus that theoretical 10% contingency. We looked at how much land is left and also some of the early conversations that we've had with folks about some of those parcels. There's not things that are formally in the hopper yet, but we do think that based on what folks are looking at doing, and we've been kind of guiding them in specific directions, there was an assemblage of land further down New Bethel, even closer to the interstate. Initially, they came in and were talking to us about higher densities, like apartments and townhomes. And we kind of had to say, I think you need to look at the opposite end of the spectrum for that. Because again, there's not any capacity for that kind of development left out here. And so here are kind of this map represents some of those places that are either available, there might be one house on several acres, some are redevelopment opportunities, but this slide represents all of those kind of undeveloped areas that we studied and looked at and tried to account for in those remaining 4,300 trips that are theoretically still out there. So with that, I'm going to return it back to Thomas to fill out the rest of the presentation, and we'll both be available to answer questions.
Thank you, Jeff. So as far as environmental and cultural resource notes, you'll see Swift Creek runs adjacent to the southwestern boundary of the site. There are associated floodplains and conservation adjacent to Swift Creek. That portion of the site will just be for tree preservation and those greenway trails. Public greenway is proposed within and near the utility easement that bisects the site and will connect to the public greenway along Swift Creek will connect the public greenway along Swift Creek to the public greenway stub from Oak Manor, providing pedestrian and recreation access to South Garner High School and points beyond. That existing home on New Bethel Church Road will be subdivided from the rest of the development. However, the homeowner has agreed to dedicate the required land along New Bethel Church Road so that the road improvements can be completed along with this project. There were 156 properties and occupants notified for neighborhood meetings. The first neighborhood meeting was October 26, 23. The second one was May 30th of this year. They had 23 attendees at the first meeting and 18 in the second meeting. The full meeting information is attached to the staff report. Just some framework maps. Again, not within an activity center. It's part of the neighborhood's area character typology, and it's a level 2 area to strengthen. For framework, there were 15 growth framework consistency criteria evaluated. 11 were rated strongly consistent, 2 modestly consistent, no split or modestly inconsistent, but there were 2 strongly inconsistent criteria. And those are all related to the recommended housing styles, lot sizes, and the relationship between them. For land use and community character consistency, staff evaluated 26 criteria applicable. The transition to a modest support is primarily attributed to an adjusted emphasis on the public realm. Exploring the use of open space for creating a stronger central focal point to the neighborhood and a stronger connectivity of the trail network now speaks more directly to specific recommendations of the comprehensive plan. So overall, although the needles can almost always be shifted towards higher levels of consistency, staff is able to support an overall finding of consistency for the request as revised. The full consistency review is attached to your staff report. The public hearing was conducted on September 17th. There were a number of citizens that spoke in opposition to the project. Some of the summary of discussion points are listed below. They expressed concern over the number of new subdivisions in the area, the capacity of the roads, traffic. They expressed concern over the R8 zoning district not being met. There were concerns over the proposed side setbacks. There were questions over master down products, if they'd be included to address senior living. There were questions of affordable housing component, which was added. And there were accommodations for the developer for working with the town to draft conditions, limit the proposed uses, and create pedestrian connectivity. There are also concerns over local school capacity. We have drafted a draft consistency statement for you, included in your staff report. There are the 4 options for you tonight to consider on the case. And we have a draft motion to recommend approval. Our next steps tonight, you'll make your findings on plan consistency and recommend approving or denying to council. It will then go to council for findings of reasonableness and a decision to approve or deny. I will be here to answer any questions, staff, additional staff members, and the applicant is here as well to present. Do you have any questions for me at the moment?
Okay, thank you. That was a lot. That's a lot.
Mr. Carson?
I have a question. Can you just clarify the existing intersections, the 2 entrances, they are currently at a DOT level of D and E currently? So with more traffic, it's going to slip to an F, but right now they're D and E?
Well, given that's a TIA finding, we'll let the applicant answer that, how those impacts are.
Are there any other questions directly to staff?
Yeah. Says that a minimum of 45% of the gross area as homeowner association owned and maintained. Isn't that relatively high compared to other subdivisions that we have seen?
So the thing to keep in mind about that is that's not just what qualifies as open space. That includes all of the other stuff that doesn't qualify for open space but is still part of an HOA managed parcel. So that includes the land area for the stormwater, because those don't count as open space. It may include just some other random areas. So it ends up being quite significant. But then you do have that big area of floodplain down at the south end of the site. So you're starting with a big chunk that's going to be in HOA, and then by the time you start adding everything else, it is probably higher than typical, but 30 to 35% is probably not unusual. So it's just a little bit higher.
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions for staff? Or would you like to now hear from the applicant? Okay, I guess we'll now ask our applicant to come forward to give us their presentation and then questions after that. Please, when you come forward, please state your name and your address and your affiliation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group, 424 Fayetteville Street, Suite 2200, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. I'm the attorney who has the privilege of working with this applicant team. Joining me tonight is the developer, and Kurt Berger, Gordon Paulson, and Stuart Paulson are the proposed developers of this site. Additionally, Beth Blackman and Jeff Hokenottle from Timmons are here to answer questions related to the application. Beth can certainly get into the planning that goes into the plan that is before you tonight, and Jeff is our traffic engineer and can answer questions that you may have related to traffic. A couple of introductory remarks before I get into the presentation. First, I want to thank the staff. I've been doing land use work in this market for over 20 years. I do most of my work in Raleigh and Western Wake County, Cary, Apex, Holly Springs. Pleased to be here tonight with you all. Your staff is excellent. They do a great job of representing the views of the council, representing the views of the Planning Commission before we get here. And so when plans get to you, they're not by mistake. The staff, Jeff, all the way down, Aaron, Thomas, every person as part of the staff really does a good job of being intentional and making sure that applicants like my client are well informed about what expectations are from folks like you all. So I just want you to know, I was on the Wake County Planning Board for 8 years. I understand the role that you all play as Planning Commission members. You're in great hands with this staff. Additionally, I do want to say I've worked with Gordon and known Gordon and Stuart and Kurt for years. And I really enjoy working with them because they're local. When they say they're going to do something, they do it well. They strive to work with town councils and planning commissions, planning staffs, the community, to bring forward developments that will make the community proud, that will fit in seamlessly, and that will be assets to the community. And we believe the plan that is before you tonight is one of those plans, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So for starters, we agree with the staff's finding, and Thomas did an excellent job of going through the details of the plan. I'm going to hit some highlights, if that's okay, and we'll answer questions that you all may have. From a comprehensive plan standpoint, we certainly agree with the staff that this proposal that's before you tonight meets the land use recommendations of the plan. It also meets the community character recommendations of the plan. With respect to land use, it's just single-family detached. We understand very, very well that there has been a glut of requests in the town relative to apartments, relative to townhomes, and townhomes could certainly be something that could have been developed on this site. But again, my client, listening to the discussions that happen here, listening to the discussions that happen at the town council table, made the decision to proceed with it exclusively a single-family detached product. Additionally, it's a single-family detached product that's being delivered at 2.3 dwelling units per acre, what we believe to be a very reasonable proposal for density associated with this site. And that's not just because of traffic, as you heard from Mr. Triesenberg relative to the capacity analysis that was done in this area. That capacity analysis recommended from 2.5 to 5 dwelling units per acre. This is well below that at 2.3, roughly 2.3, 2.32 is the last number that we were at with our revised proposal at 322 dwelling units. Just so you all are aware, we're always sensitive to making sure that we're accurately portraying what the effective density is. So if you remove all of the undevelopable areas, the buffered streams, the wetlands, the transmission line that goes through the site, the density associated with this proposal is 3.4 dwelling units per acre. Again, it's a responsible proposal associated with density that we believe will fit in nicely with this area. We also believe it's a nice transition from the community to the north, which is more dense than ours, has smaller lots across the board, generally speaking, to the community to our south, which has larger lots. And I'll talk a little bit about the master plan here in a moment, and I'll walk you through that. But overall, I'm trying to get it to cycle forward.
Oh, it might be turned off.
Sorry about that. Thank you. But overall, we believe it's an appropriate density. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan's land use recommendations, and it's going to provide what we believe to be an effective transition from the community to the north to the community to the south. In addition to the land use recommendations, as you all are aware, the comprehensive plan also speaks to community character. And Kurt, Beth, the entire team has really spent a great amount of time working with Jeff and the staff to curate this plan in a way that's going to make it unique. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we believe the community character is reflected very, very well in this proposal, and we agree with the staff's position regarding how the plan ultimately is consistent with those recommendations. So from an open space standpoint, and you're right, 45%, Mr. Boylan, it's a larger number than you would typically see, and that's reflective of the amount of active open space that has been wired into this plan. And so, and I'll talk a little bit about the trail system that ties all these together, but ultimately there's 32 acres of open spaces associated with this development. 20% of those of which are active open spaces. A couple of other numbers we think are very, very important as it relates to the character of the type of development you're going to get here. That first number is that 75% of the homes are within a 7-lot walk to a walking trail. So you're not going to have to walk 20 lots down the street in order to get to one of the trails that weaves in and out of the site. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Additionally, 79% of the homes are within a 7-lot walk of an active open space. Again, that is not by accident. That has been intentional between my client working with the staff to create the type of community that will encourage people to get out, to move around, and engage in these open spaces. And as you can see on this slide, there's a variety of different types of open spaces that are built into this plan. There are play lawns littered throughout the community, and they're all wound together by a combination of private and public walking trails that move through the site. As it relates to the walking trails, between public and private trails, there's roughly 8,900 linear feet of trails that move in and out of the community, connecting people who live there to these open spaces that we're talking about. 8,900 linear feet. That's 1.5 miles of private and public trails that are wired into this plan that will make it unique. It will provide a sense of place for people that live here, and it will get people out. It really will cater to folks who want to be active and want to get out in public. And so we're very proud of the work that's gone into that. This is not a case of a developer trying to cram as much density on the site as they possibly can. And the amount of open space that's being provided is reflective of that. The amount of walking trails that's being provided is certainly reflective of the efforts that have gone into that. And so again, these are more of the open spaces that are built into the plan. And these are the trail system. This is the trail system that I'm speaking of, the public and private trails that will serve the community, that will encourage activity for the people that are living there, and ultimately provide for a healthier, happier community of residents. The staff has already talked about the utility plan. I do want to highlight a handful of other conditions associated with the case that we believe is going to make a community a better community, a stronger community, a more attractive community. So starting at condition 8, and I'm not going to go through because Thomas did a great job of kind of running through all the conditions, but conditions 8 through 13 are conditions that require a higher level of residential architecture, residential type, and will ensure that it is a high quality development that will be an asset to the town. And so again, these are all, the conditions related to requiring 2-car garages, requiring minimum eaves, requiring that there's not going to be slab on grade, there's going to be 12 inches of separation from the front door. Again, all of these things create value and create attractive places for people to want to live. Additionally, at least 10% of the homes will have first floor primary bedrooms, first floor masters. That you heard at the public hearing, when we went to public hearing, there was a question associated with that. There is a condition in this case that requires at least 10% of the units will have first floor masters, which we believe will be attractive to the 55 and older community. It will make it easier for folks who are kind of the later in life community, but still active adults, to be able to live here and do so in a way that's seamless and works with their standard of living. That condition number 15 is that 10% condition that I was speaking of. I do want to note that even though this property doesn't have frontage on New Bethel Church Road, my client has worked with the owners of that property to ensure that the frontage improvements, and I'll go back to our master plan just so I can highlight that. You can see it here. So the frontage improvements along New Bethel Church Road here, those are going to be done with the development. And so even though that portion of the site is not part of the zoning proposal, they worked with the owners to get a commitment to allow this development team to go in and make those very critical, very important transportation improvements along New Bethel Church Road, again, in an effort to try to do the right thing. We've also incorporated conditions that have been intentionally responsive to neighbor concerns. As you all are aware, we had 2 neighborhood meetings. One of the things that we have agreed to do is we've proposed a perimeter buffer, condition number 18 that you see on your screen, a perimeter buffer along the shared property line with that PIN number, which is at 5020 Altamont Court. That's on the southern portion of our site, to include a fence, and a fence meeting the UDO standard for location, height, and material. Additionally, we've agreed to put in a sign that prohibits construction traffic, or at least discourages construction traffic from going through their neighborhood. We understand their sensitivity to that. However, since we added that condition, as you all may be aware, if you heard the public hearing, we actually tried to put a condition on the case so Altamont Court comes in right here. That's the vehicular connection that goes into that community. What we had told the neighbors we would do at our second neighborhood meeting, because they were concerned about traffic moving from our site through their site and burdening their roads, which are not maintained by the city of Garner, we had hoped to be able to put in a gate, kind of an emergency gate that would provide access for emergency vehicles, but wouldn't allow day-to-day traffic to move through there. That wasn't permitted by the UDO because there were too many homes on that single point of access for us to be able to make that a gated situation. You need that second point of access from a safety standpoint, from an EMS standpoint. However, what we have been able to do is work with staff to propose you can't see it really well here. Hopefully you can see it better on your master plan. as you make your way into our site, it actually necks down. So it's only going to be a one-way traffic movement. So vehicles that live in the existing residential neighborhood will be able to drive through our community, but vehicles that are coming from our community will not be able to drive through theirs. This is something that the town has done on at least one other project, and the idea is to be able to neck it down to provide one-way traffic. That way those folks have the ability to get in and get out. Obviously, if there are emergency vehicles that need to be able to access their site, they can certainly access it that way. But the daily traffic that's being generated by this development will not be going through their community. So that was something that we added after the public hearing in an effort to continue to work with those neighbors and provide a community that will be seamless and will be the right fit in this for the folks who live there. Additionally, I do want to point out the larger lots that were added, the 12 roughly 10,000 square foot lots that were added. They have been added along the southern boundary of our site, again, right here at Altamont Court. I mean, that's essentially, as it relates to how this community is going to fit with that community, that's kind of ground zero, for lack of a better way to put it. So we've been very intentional about working with those neighbors, working within the confines of our plan to do what we can do. So there was a concern raised at the public hearing by a couple of those neighbors related to the number of homes that were going to be behind them. So we enlarged the homes to roughly 10,000 square foot along that boundary in an effort to provide a better quality of life for the people that are going to be, that will be living there currently, but certainly will be living in our community. And then last, I do want to point out, as was noted, we have added a condition requiring that 10 units at 80% AMI are going to be included as workforce housing units associated with this case. That's roughly 3% of the proposal. I'm seeing that in the other places where I do work. On the ownership side, 2.5% is typically the number you see when it's an owner occupied type of unit that's being proposed. Additionally, as noted in condition 22, and I've already talked about it, that's that one-way condition. And lastly, the increased lot size is something that changed since the public hearing. The last point I'll make, and Mr. Triesenberg did a fantastic job of running through traffic. We're sensitive to traffic. We understand that traffic is always everyone's concern, especially in an area like this. We believe that we've been responsible about that from a density standpoint. We've studied the traffic. We're complying with the recommendations of our traffic study, and the staff has done a great job of kind of taking it one step further, doing that capacity analysis, determining that there is sufficient capacity to be able to support this development as well as others that may come along. And so ultimately, we believe this is the right use in the right location. We're excited to be able to be here, happy to answer any questions that you all may have, and we would respectfully request you all's recommendation of approval of the case.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Barron. Planning Commission. So do we have questions for the applicant? Would you like to?
I know, Mr. Carson, you had a traffic question?
Yes, and I guess I could direct that to Jeff.
Mr. Hokenottle, yeah.
Oh, sorry, over here.
That's above my pay grade for sure.
Again, please state your name and your affiliation as well and your address when you.
Sure. Jeff Oaknall, I work for Timmons Group, 5410 Trinity Road, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27607.
So my question was with regards to the existing road condition out there being a DOT level D and E. And with the increased traffic, that's going to push it into an F. So I guess first part of the question is it my understanding correct that the current roads out there are D and E?
Which intersection specifically are you referring to?
Hebron Church Road at White Oak Road and New Bethel Church at NC 50. That is on page 10 of.
So White Oak Church Road and Hebron Church Road, the eastbound approach is operating at a level service E. Yes, that's for existing analysis, that's the only intersection movement that's currently, or intersection approach that's currently operating unacceptably. Once you add site traffic to the network, that intersection movement, so White Oak and Hebron Church, that intersection we looked at, we analyzed as a roundabout. That roundabout will operate acceptably. when all's said and done. Being DOT standards, you have to look at, you can't look at the level of service there, you gotta look at volume to capacity ratio, but it meets the NCDOT's threshold for that. The only intersection movement that's currently, or intersection movements that will currently operate unacceptably during the 26 build is the northbound approach. It's actually called Gunderson Lane. It's opposite Clifford at New Bethel Church. That's not uncommon to see an unsignalized side street intersection operate unacceptably during a peak hour. Typically what that is you've got queuing on the side street. The way the model works, it gives, you're basically tend to focus on a couple things when you're looking at the model for a unsignalized intersection. You look at the main street through movements. You also look at the queuing on the side street. We didn't note any significant queuing projected for that movement, so we didn't make any recommendations. The only recommendation that we could make at that location is intersection signalization to get it to actually work and operate properly to meet the model to get under level service D. But that intersection didn't meet signal warrants, so signalization would not be approved there by NCDOT. The only other movement that operated unacceptably was the eastbound approach at Timber and White Oak. That's level service E during the PM peak hour. That's a heavy intersection, not particularly surprising. The overall intersection that's signalized operates at level service D, so we didn't make any recommendations there either.
So, question for staff is there anything in the pipeline or looking down the road that would upgrade this road in a specific time frame to something better than a D and an E?
And which one are we speaking of? Hebron?
Well, again, I'm looking at these two intersections, Hebron Church and White Oak and New Bethel at NC 50, because that's the one that appears to be at a level D/E. I mean, when you're getting up to an F, that's about as worse. You know, that's as bad as you can get. So I'm just wondering if there's something else in the pipeline. Is there DOT Town of Garner possible upgrade to that area in the foreseeable future?
So I think at White Oak and Hebron, you know, the immediate thing is the roundabout, kind of equaling that out and keeping that at an acceptable level of service longer. For 50 in New Bethel, I think it probably has more to do with being able to spread the traffic out. I think as much as can be done there is being done. There's some different, you know, little pieces of improvement that are being done along Highway 50 that I can't remember if Leah came and gave you all a overview of everything that's going on the 50 corridor like she did before the town council. I can't quite recall if she did that or not. But ultimately, you know, 50 needs more capacity. But I think spreading it out and potentially getting Ackerman out to 50 and getting some of these other connections made, that's probably the best bet, because there's really not much more you can do at that intersection.
I got one more question, but I do want to just thank staff for the capacity analysis they've done in considering other developments in the pipeline, because that's very helpful when you see the graph and how that was split up and what you looked at. I think that was very helpful. My next question, I guess, for Jeff would be on your dedicated westbound left turn lane from New Bethel and the additional pavement striping for the dedicated right turn lane at site access 1, that's on page 9. Those queuing lanes that's kind of the minimum DOT. That's 5 cars that might be able to pull in there. Would there be consideration to perhaps making that a little bit longer? I know that's the minimum, but.
Sure. Yeah, and like I said, what that gives you, and what DOT came back with and was required was 100 feet of storage. We recommended 50, which would be the minimum. So 100 feet will give you, that's 100 feet of full width storage, plus then you have to count the taper, which also gives you an additional 50 feet. So technically that gives you, if you're assuming 25 foot per car, that gives you 6 vehicles of stacking. 6 vehicles of stacking is a lot in the center turn lane. Right turn lane is excessive. I don't think that you're going to get anywhere near that.
So that dedicated turn lane, that's exclusive of the tapers?
Correct. That's
Okay.
the full width storage.
Okay, I
yes.
thought you were gonna take the tapers off of that.
No,
so,
that's full width storage. That's how we report ours. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would like to say, we kind of talked about capacity a little bit earlier. All the counts and everything was done prior to 540 coming through, and so that 540 will adjust traffic, and we'll take some traffic coming from the south. Will it impact 50 significantly where we're dropping levels of service, way down? Probably not, but it will have a positive impact, I think. But we've got to let the numbers kind of flush themselves out over time. So, and then also to Jeff's study, we did an independent study. We actually went out and did counts as well. You did 23 or found 23 counts. We did actually counts in 24. And oddly enough, I came to the exact same conclusion as you did. That there's about 4,300 ADT or vehicles or capacity left. I was looking at the number. When you said 18,000, mine came out almost exactly the same. So we were able to verify his independently. So, good job.
Guess not too bad for us planner types.
I do want to comment on a few things. I appreciate the applicant working with the planning department and coming up with a plan that's single-family homes, the amount of green space and parks. I appreciate the reduced density. You went from 367 down to 322, so you're down 2.3. You have a decent-sized garage. A lot of them are smaller than that we've been seeing. And your increased buffer setbacks and just your walkability around the proposed development to get to a green space or a trail. I do applaud you on your affordable housing content at 3%. That's right up there, I think, with probably a couple of the highest ones that we have seen come before the commission. But I would ask that you consider perhaps, you have the covenant that you propose for your affordable housing expires on the first resale of that affordable housing unit. Perhaps consider putting a time frame in there that they have to be a resident or own that property for X number of years, so that you're not getting people come in, take the advantage of an affordable housing and then flip it within a year or a year and a half. And maybe that's something that, it's one thing to get the affordable housing units, but you'd like to keep the people there that it was intended for, as opposed to flipping it and getting it back at market valuations. But perhaps consider something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll take a look at that for sure.
That's all I have for right now.
Mr. Boland?
Yeah. I too have to appreciate what you've done here. You have a very, very long and narrow parcel that is divided by an overhead power line easement that is divided 3 different ways by existing streams, that has a wetland on Swift Creek that you're thankfully leaving alone, that you have 4 stormwater control mechanisms to help integrate this into the environment. So you were challenged, I think, with this parcel. I recall we had a parcel in Garner near the high school that was also very long and narrow, and it just didn't work. But so I appreciate what you've done here. Are these streams that show existing stream, are they all active? Do they have flow, or are they mostly intermittent?
So, good evening, Beth Blackman, Simmons Group, 5410 Trinity Road, Suite 102. I do not have the report in front of me, so I do not know if the upper one is perennial, but the lower one and obviously Swift Creek are perennial. But I don't remember about the upper one, so I don't want to tell you incorrectly. There is, it has been confirmed, so this is what we have, has been confirmed with the Corps and with the state.
Okay. Most of my questions usually involve water or stormwater and so on. Question, water and sewers provided by the city of Raleigh.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. You had a question on your October 26th neighborhood meeting, and it was, will you be connecting us to water or sewage? The answer was no. I presume that was from a neighboring property?
Correct. All of our attendees at our neighborhood meetings were from Glen Creek. Those were our only attendees. City of Raleigh requires you to provide sewer to upstream parcels because of the shape and the topography of this site. I don't think we will be providing sewer to any individual parcels in Glen Creek, but we would only provide it on our property and we would stop. And then if they needed to annex or apply for annexation to the town of Garner to connect to sewer, septic's failing or something like that, then they would have that option, but we would not be forcing anyone to connect.
So the answer no was to that individual questioner?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, for our neighborhood, obviously, we would be connecting to water and sewer, but it was in regards to whether the neighbors had to connect, or had to be annexed, or had to connect to utilities.
Okay. I'm done.
Other questions? Ms. Phillips, you have any questions or comments?
Not right now.
Questions? I mean, I can go down the list, but you can always just speak up whenever you would like.
Hi.
Hi.
Are there any visuals for what the houses may look like?
Do we have elevations at this point? Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gotcha. And then my other question is, so the greenways and the trails, will they connect to like any of the stores and shops if there are any nearby, or what do they connect to?
So ultimately, they're connecting, the community to itself as well as the communities around. One of the things that has been done as part of this project, and I'm not sure, there we go. So the site that is not included in this development, once it's recombined, they set aside additional acreage. It's roughly 9 acres. That site we pulled out for the possibility that when demand is sufficient, maybe that site could develop as commercial, and then there would be connections there. Don't know what that site ultimately would develop. But at this point, given how adjacent developments have built out, there's a greenway that's going to be lining the western edge of the property that will ultimately connect to the greater greenway system. But at this point, it's really kind of making connections to existing communities and then providing robust connections within the community itself.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I definitely like the trails and the greenways, similar to what they echoed down there. And then my other question is, so I noticed that there's a lot of like green spaces. Are there any like tennis courts, basketball courts, anything like that?
Yeah.
Can you go to the one that has the open space? So we've shown conceptual exhibits of what the open space areas could show. We, in the main amenity area, have commitments in our zoning conditions as far as what has to be there. But conceptually, we are showing, and we, in all of our conversations, have committed to 3 pickleball courts. Obviously, covered shade areas. We also talked about bathrooms for that one amenity area. And then the others have more active but less structured play areas.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
So, Ms. Bishop, you asked the question related to greenways, and Beth did a great job of being the planner on the gig and reminding me that the transmission line that runs through our site, our greenway, will connect through the community to the north that ultimately will connect out to the school. So there will be a greenway connection from our site to the school.
Okay. Thank you.
So I didn't have any questions, but I did have a comment or a couple comments. I ditto what Mr. Voiland said about your use of this unique space. When I rode out to look at it the other day, like he said, with the power lines, going through the middle of it, I was like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. So I commend you on how you have been able to develop it. And I also commend you on having 3/4 of your homes within 7 lots of some type of exercise or green space or trail. I also like the fact that you've got, 30 plus first floor masters, even, non-senior people enjoy not having
Sure.
to run up and down stairs.
Absolutely.
I also like the affordable housing unit component, like that component. And then the thing I think I like best is the fact that you did incorporate so many green spaces and play areas and recreation spaces, as opposed to just maximizing the utmost number of homes that you could into the development. In other words, maximizing your profit, sacrificing, homes for profits. But I do appreciate the fact that you have a good layout here. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think most of the things have been said, but again, second, I do like the layout and the thought that was put into the layout in general and how the connectivity to each other. One question I had was just for the first floor primary suites, you said a minimum of 10%. How is that number or that percentage? How do you come up with that? What are you looking for? What are you taking in consideration when you come up with a house can viably have a first floor master suite, and why wouldn't it be a higher number?
Yeah, so I think with the 10% number is really reflective of making a minimum commitment and then allowing, as the community builds out, to be able to respond to market conditions. And so it's kind of striking that balance between what does the market want, but also guaranteeing that at least 32 of those units will have that first floor primary residence for people who are interested. It could be more, but it's not going to be any less than 32. So it's really just kind of maintaining flexibility to be market responsive while at the same time making sure that there is a stock of those available to the community.
Okay, I was been in that area. There's, I guess, a few neighborhoods that have some ranch options, but for the most part, most of the neighborhoods are 2-story homes, and there's not a 55 plus community directly in that side of town that I'm aware of. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I like the option, again, for different reasons, whether it's for people who, 55 plus, or something happens and you just can't get up and down steps and you need a space downstairs that you can access, and trying to think about what is needed in that area, in the areas. But okay, we'll see once you guys come back with some housing plans as well to see, further questions.
Hopefully you'll see it again.
Yeah.
I do have one more, just a comment. On the common area, or common greens and pocket parks, you note that you would do improvements of at least 2 of the following. There's a good list there, and a lot of these are complementary improvements, and I think I would encourage you to incorporate more than the minimum 2. You've got picnic tables and dog parks and shade structures and seating areas. I think with as much green space as you have, I think you could really make these focal points for the community. And being a dog person myself, you could put 3 or 4 dog parks there. That's fine. No, there's a great list there, and I think that with the trails and the connectivity and the walking and just the travelers' rest areas and things, I mean, it's a very walkable development, and I think that a lot of thought and design has gone into achieving that.
I just wanted to comment on one thing. So those 2 items that you were selecting are in addition to the UDO requirements for supplemental landscaping and seating that is required for open space areas. So they're kind of like the extras. So you're getting some stuff kind of automatically.
Okay.
But I'm a dog person as well. I like dog parks everywhere.
I would like to make, I guess, one note. as far as like a recommendation to, even to town council, I noticed that transportation is a huge focus and issue, I think, just in general with this development and others, but just considering, improving our public transportation and bus systems and any other, and leveraging our train tracks and other things like that to kind of reduce some of the usage on the roads.
That's a really good comment, Ms. Bishop, about public transportation access, bus stop. So it's kind of a hard entry, I think, into the site in a way from New Bethel. I'm not sure if you all have thought about where you would provide some type of public right-of-way for bus route that would connect to our bus route from City of Raleigh. And
Yeah, I think that my guess is that something could be located out on New Bethel. We don't have anything internal to the site planned right now. Really would have to be responsive to what the demand is, not foreclosing the possibility of having a stop. We obviously don't have frontage out onto New Bethel. I agree with you. It makes it a little tricky. We're optimistic that the way we're tying into the community that's developing to our north as well as to the south, it will feel like more of a seamless fit with what's going on, and that as transit needs develop in this area, as bus service is extended to this area, that this will be well positioned to receive the benefit of the access that those communities have out onto New Bethel Church.
perhaps the improvements that may be happening on the frontage of Bethel Church that you all may be providing may allow for
Sure.
a,
That's something we can take a
space
look at.
that is
Yes.
at least allocated for future bus stop for bus transit along Bethel, New Bethel Church. I can't remember where our bus routes are in this area or proposed at some point, but I think that, allocating some type of right of way in the future so it's not so difficult to make that happen would be very useful.
That's a great comment. We'll take a look.
I have a few comments, some architectural comments. I tend to ask and suggest that our overhangs are larger than 8 inches and meet at minimum a 12-inch overhang for better shade calculation on southern and western exposures of our roof lines. And the 4-inch minimum eave rake soffit, I think, also should be enlarged. I think there should always be at least a 12-inch and an 8-inch minimum because of our shade calculation and our runoff of water off of our overhang. So I can't change your design, but I would suggest that we think about your overhangs a little bit more.
Okay.
If you look at some of the older stock of housing and Garner, those overhangs are much longer than 8 inches on existing. PVC solid trim boards, since you're providing the potential for some cementitious and wood siding, it seems that it makes sense that we match the same material for your trim boards. They really do function differently. I mean, the materials are different, and so they expand and contract very differently. And so I would just make that suggestion to you. I know that's up to you on how that's done. The 5 foot by 5 foot front porch, it shows that's minimum. Do you have any idea what the maximum size of the front porches are for those?
Yeah, we don't know at this time. Again, we provided a minimum to make sure that there is sufficient space for people to be out on their front porch, but we don't have a builder selected at this time, so we don't know what that maximum will look like, Mr. Jefferson.
So because of the way that your lots are oriented, front to front, front to front, front to front, facing frontages, 5 feet by 5 feet is enough for probably one good chair.
Yeah, understood.
And so that's not really, to me, it's not a front porch, it's a stoop. So I would, to try to match the character of our existing older neighborhoods, the front area is much wider. A porch, and I know that all depends on how you design the footprint of the building and such, but I would just suggest that if it's, I'll say this, that my first glance at this when I started looking at this and not seeing a type of grid-like connection from the more the northwest portion of the existing site and the kind of southeast, when I tend to see lot lines, I tend to want to try and connect the grid, and which is not the case in this much at all. And so that was difficult for me to connect, but I also understand the difficulties of the existing right of way for power lines and such. But when you're facing each other, it seems like that's the opportunity to create the outdoor space that we've talked about in that kind of front of the houses in our comprehensive plans and our kind of ideas. So I would just make a request that we think about what that front of the house really engages, how we engage the street with that. And if it's supposed to be a porch, then is it a porch for sitting, or is it just a stoop to access the house?
Sure.
To me, that's a much different condition. Have you? I know we haven't gotten into planting idea, but in the right of way for the power lines where you have play lawns, was there a consideration of what is acceptable planting wise in those areas, or was it just open green?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, and Beth, I'll let you chime in, but as you're aware, within those transmission line, you're not putting upper story trees.
Right.
There is some limited ability to put in kind of understory trees, but typically what Progress Energy is going to allow in those areas are shrubs. That's what Duke will typically allow. Yeah, and
Right,
Yep.
right. Okay, so that is you're thinking about that when you have these open spaces for play and there's really not much shade.
yeah,
provided.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's just of concern, just to kind of really make sure that we think about what that can be.
And Duke Energy does have a list of allowable trees, the things that stay, on the shorter side. It does include more than you would expect that it includes, but obviously everything will have to run through them. But there is some planting that is allowed.
Okay. Because, I think about when that actually does become a useful space, when we say it's part of our open space, that is active open space, and at the heat of the day, if it's so hot because there's no shade, nobody's going
to use it. Absolutely. Yep.
So then we just have this swath of access.
And Mr. Jefferson, we did, as staff, when we looked at those spaces, we did notice that there was some additional adjacent open space to both of those that wasn't in the power line right of way. So we did comment to them about moving the play field to the side. So you'll see the one on the north is shifted to the north and the one on the south is shifted to the south, so that there could be
more
a shaded area nearby,
Good.
right adjacent to the field.
Good. Thank you for keeping that as part of your conversation. I think everyone else has kind of made comments on other items that I have noted.
I did have one more question, probably for staff, on you talked about the growth framework consistency. Could you expand on the part where while R8 supported zoning district, the single family detached, the units do not meet the intended form of the small lot single family homes, and the larger lots do not meet the standard for large lots?
Sure. So I think Aaron's had to explain this a couple of times because it's come up. Basically what it boils down to is we have zoning districts in the UDO that predate the new comp plan. The new comprehensive plan does look to try to encourage a different form of residential. So the comprehensive plan talks about large lots and small lots, and it has a very prescriptive number of square feet in the lot that kind of separates those large lots from small lots. By the comprehensive plan, these would be considered small. And the comprehensive plan, when you're looking at small lots, it wants to have the garage in the back.
Okay.
It wants to either have it off the alley, or maybe you have a shared driveway between two lots and the garages are in the back. I don't know. Some older neighborhoods that I'm more familiar with, like when I started in Burlington, they had a lot of neighborhoods like that had the shared driveways. I actually lived in one for a while, which was interesting. But yeah, the garages were pushed into the back. There was no alley back there, but you had a long driveway that went
And
down
then-
the edge.
Yeah.
And so that's what the new comprehensive plan is trying to encourage folks to start thinking about. And if you want to do this more front-loaded product with the garages in the front, it wants the lots to be bigger.
Okay.
So it's kind of flipping it a little bit. And so, you know, not everybody though started thinking about their projects with that in mind, because some of these still predate some of our work on that comprehensive plan. So yeah, it's kind of, do you just upend the whole thing and tell somebody to go back and start from scratch, or you kind of look at what's around it? And so in one respect, while it's not meeting the intent of the comp plan in those areas, you do look at the neighborhoods that are around it. And it does kind of fit, though, the existing character that's been started in the area. So it's kind of one of those judgment calls you just have to make and what you're comfortable with.
So the 140 units and 12 units, those size lots are still considered by the new comp plan a small lot, or is it all of just the
I'm not sure
206
about
units?
the 12. Aaron, what's the cutoff? Is it 12,000 square feet? 10,000 square feet?
Okay.
So those might actually.
Right around. But I'm assuming
that.
for this plan, you probably wouldn't have 12 houses that have a different, like, garage in the back, and I guess it wouldn't support it based on how these are laid out
Right.
anyway, so they would be up front, and that may come into your front porch.
You know, it's good that you brought that up, because that was also on my item. It is a lot of the front to back or backyard spacing or access, non-access really, that it would have been really helpful or wonderful if there was some alley of some access or tree line that was dedicated, that wasn't necessarily part of the property, but it was, you know, because now we're gonna have fence and fence, right? Fence back, fence back, fence back, fence back, and if there was a way to connect the streets through the center of the lots at the back, it would be really, I think, more of the carriage side rear load. So even if it was only a private one-way drive or two-way access, but that may or may not be able to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would add on the discussion related to lot size, the smaller lot sizes, they provide the flexibility to be able to do the amount of open spaces that are associated with this plan. I mean, that's really the benefit that you get from a plan like this. And one of the reasons we believe it's justified to go with the smaller lots is that we are providing these active open spaces, these passive open spaces. It's not just a matter of we're squeezing it all in. You know, when you start to talk about alleys, I certainly am familiar with alley-fed product, but that comes at a cost, not just to put them in, but it also comes at a cost of open spaces. That, you know, and it's tough, right? It is a tough site, and you know, as Jeff alluded to, you're kind of weighing a variety of different influences associated with recommendations of the comprehensive plan. We believe that the lot sizes are appropriate in this area, given the existing built environment, and allow us to be able to have these robust walking trails and open spaces.
And I just wanted to add, this is in the Swift Creek watershed overlay, so you have an impervious limitation. So adding alleys is adding additional pavement. We would rather focus on the sidewalks on both sides of the street, the trails and stuff like that, versus having that extra alley, because that is really going to cut down on the other things you can do. So in this area of town with the Swift Creek overlay and your limitations on impervious, it's a challenging area to add alleys. So that's why actually none of the neighborhoods in this area had them so far.
And I will just offer to get down to like the nitty gritty, you know, the 52-foot wide lots, if you take off a 6-foot side setback on each side, you've still got 40 feet left of width. So it might not quite be, you know, your garage is probably going to be, if it's a 2-stall, about 24 feet wide. So it's still leaving, it's not quite 50% of the house frontage, but it's not the, there's less opportunity for the shotgun style where you have and they have committed to some of the garages either being recessed, but it's not going to be one of those situations, I don't believe, where we'll end up with the garage that's front and center, and then a little 6-foot wide recessed front door way back there. So it should, the 45-foot lots are going to be a little tighter, but there still should be able to make that a little more substantive.
Okay, I will hold them to that. Thank you.
I feel like I was being peered at.
Are there, this is, I guess, unless there's any other questions or comments for our applicant.
I don't have any.
Great. Well, we'll be here if you do.
I guess this is time that I open up the floor for comments from public, for or against. And so if there are any that would like to speak for or against. Seeing there are none. Then is there a motion on the floor from Planning Commission for us to continue to discuss this
I
submission?
move that the planning commission accept the consistency statement drafted herein as our own written recommendation regarding the consistency of the request with the town's adopted land use plans and recommend approval of case CZMP 2307 to the town council.
Thank you, Ms. Avon. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Oh, sorry.
There's a motion on the floor, and I will call the vote.
Everybody seconded.
Gina Avent,
Aye.
Mariah Bishop,
Aye.
Ralph Carson,
Aye.
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jehan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips,
Aye.
Michael Voiland.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you. We have passed and approved for council. Thank you so much for being here, those that have, that were on this case. We will move on to our next case. I can find my notes. CZ 24002 Gateway 540.
All right, good evening, commission members. It's good to see you all this evening. My name is Erin Joseph, and I will present case CZ 24002, also known as Gateway 540. This request is a Tier 1 conditional rezoning. It does not include a master plan. The request includes 97.15 acres. The applicant, Beth Blackman of Timmons Group, has requested to rezone Wake County's Highway District and Residential 30 to light industrial conditional. It also encompasses the limited highway access overlay and Lower Swift Conservation Overlay districts. The site is located along Parish Farm Road, Benson Road, Cleveland School Road, and Painters Road. The current zoning of the sites, Wake County Highway District and Residential 30. These districts are primarily intended for low-density residential. However, the HD district allows for residential, low-density residential, and it also allows for a wide range of non-residential uses that are primarily approved by special use permit. The surrounding zoning districts of the site include R30, which surrounds the site on 3 sides, Highway District to the north, so this is the R30, and then you have the Highway District.
You have 540 is adjacent to the site as well to the north. And there are two mixed-use rezoning cases, one that was recently approved within the 1 mile radius of the site, and one that is currently under review with the town. This image on the screen gives you an idea of the area at large, as well as the site's location in proximity to the other cases. So this is the CZ 2302 that was approved by council this month. And this is our Tier 2 master plan mixed-use development that is primarily residential and may have a commercial component to it as well, just west of the site. And this stretch of Benson Road is an arterial road. It's primarily 2 lanes, although there are some improvements due to the extension of the NC 540 project. But Benson Road, or NC 50, does connect Garner's Town Core on its north end and south to the Community Activity Center at 1010 Road. And it further connects at 540, the Regional Employment Center, and then eventually on to NC 42. NCDOT last reports the traffic counts at Benton Road in this section as 17,544 annual average daily trips, and at Cleveland School Road at 9,549 AADT. And this data was obtained in 2023. The proposed rezoning seeks a light industrial conditional zoning district. The applicant has narrowed the potential uses to 31 out of 41. And they have also proffered an additional 11 conditions. The first set of conditions are definitions, and you have in your packet as Exhibit B the area map, and also on the screen here. So you'll note that I will speak about the employment pod area, and also in this pink color, the commercial services pod area. And so the condition goes further to define these areas. The area for development encompasses the 97.15 acres. The commercial services pod refers to that area, as you can see again on the map, that commences from this northern boundary on Benson Road, and it is 600 feet long, and then it goes to the frontage of Cleveland School Road. It's also 300 feet in depth. The employment pod means the areas that do not encompass the commercial services pods. All of that tan color that you see on the screen there. Now, within the commercial services pod, the applicant has restricted the uses that will be allowed in that particular area. And so there are 15 uses that are allowed within this area. You have them on your screen. However, in condition 4, commits to allowing those uses that are allowed within the commercial services pod to expand within the employment pod area. But further, the next condition explains that the maximum amount of commercial service areas that is no more than 25% of the gross land area shall be dedicated for, or shall be developed for commercial services uses. So those 15 uses will be limited to 25% of the gross land area. Then further within the employment pod area of the developable area, you have the maximum amount of flex space uses. And so for a period of 10 years following the date of the first certificate of occupancy, no more than 25% of the gross land area within the employment pod shall be used for flex space uses. And they have also proffered conditions as 15% tree preserved area, a 7,000 square foot area that is reserved for community gathering space that will include benches and other art installation and placemaking amenities. There will also be a minimum of 75% of landscaping that shall be native and adaptive species, as well as 50% of pollinator-friendly plants will be provided. The applicant has also committed to architectural standards, such as building materials, entranceway, covered awnings, and outdoor spaces, furthering the size of those outdoor spaces. You have a area map that again shows Exhibit B, the employment pod, as well as the commercial services pod area. Regarding transportation, the expected trips that are expected to be generated is 2,493 average daily trips. This is actually a 50% increase to allow flexibility for the ultimate uses that may be developed at this site. It is expected to generate 275 trips in and 90 trips out during the AM peak hours, and 144 trips and 200 in and 252 trips out during the PM peak hours. There were two access scenarios that were studied, but one was ultimately ruled out by the Turnpike Authority. You have an image of the future lane configuration, build-out configuration. So I'll just highlight it on the screen, but I'll briefly go through those for you as well. So they do on Cleveland School Road, there is a dedicated right turn lane with 100 feet of storage. And then you have a dedicated turn lane, left turn lane with 200 feet of storage onto the Cleveland School Road. There's also from NC 50, a dedicated right lane with 50 feet of storage, and then a left lane with 350 feet of storage. Now this site is a part of our Garner Forward's comprehensive plan. It's actually one of the focus areas, Focus Area 5, NC 540 at NC 50. On the screen, you have an insert from the comprehensive plan. And draw your attention to sub-area 1 as well as sub-area 2. Now, in sub-area 1 within our Garner Forward plan is noted to have a mix of employment uses that is organized around Life Science Center campus that will be a strong draw for logistics. In Area 2 sketches commercial development that can be both locally serving as well as serving for the traveling public. So this choice of zoning district of LI is particularly supportive
of the recommendations within the sub-area 1. Even further, noting that this site was identified as a high priority site within the Garner Industrial Growth Study that was commissioned in 2022 by the Garner Economic Development Corporation. And also the site was identified as a top Garner site in the county in the 2023 Wake County Economic Development Site Identification Study. As we reviewed the consistency framework, it was determined that 9 growth framework criteria were evaluated. 7 were strongly consistent, 2 were modestly inconsistent. And the prevailing building heights and the transportation choices were negatively rated due to the lack of commitment of building height minimums and maximums, as well as the absence of separate infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists. However, we do note that the transportation choice is a pre-existing condition, and so it did not receive the lowest rating. Looking at the land use and community character consistency, 13 criteria were determined to be applicable or possible to meaningfully address. 2 were strongly consistent, 5 were modestly consistent, had 5 that were split, and 1 strongly inconsistent. And that was due to the lack of commitment to green stormwater infrastructure. And as there are opportunities for the shifting of the consistency to just move those needles to a higher level of consistency. But staff can support an overall finding of consistency based on this revised request. Staff has drafted a consistency statement for your review and consideration. And also we've provided a highlighted option that indicates the results of the analysis of staff's analysis, which is consistent and recommend approval. And also you have before you a draft motion of approval, to recommend approval. This concludes my presentation. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions. The applicant is also here to answer any questions this evening. So the next steps, we ask that the commission this evening deliberate findings of consistency and recommendation of approval or denial to Town Council. And then the case will be heard before Town Council to discuss the reasonableness of the proposal and to render a decision of approval or denial. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Are you ready to hear from the applicant? Mr. Boylan, so you have a question?
Yeah. Jeff, could you refresh my memory what is meant by Life Science Center campus?
I think in the drafting of the plan, they were thinking along the lines of probably something more in the research development, pharmaceutical, biopharma, that kind of thing. But it can be anything that's kind of related to research and development around the life sciences fields.
Okay. Yep. All right. That's all I had.
Okay, well, there's no questions for no additional questions for staff. We have our applicant here.
I'm back.
You are back.
Once again, Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group, 424 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. Here representing the same developer. So it's Kurt Berger, Gordon Paulson, and Stuart Paulson. Beth Blackman has also handled the planning associated with this particular request. The only difference in the two teams, as opposed to the the previous case, is that Reinhold Stevenson with DRNP is the traffic engineer on this project and can answer questions related to traffic. Big picture, this case is about economic development opportunity. As was mentioned in the slides, as well as the staff report, the county has identified this as one of the best sites left in the county for economic development opportunities. Garner and the county have rated it as Garner's top site for economic development opportunity. What is being proposed by this rezoning case and the conditions that are before you, and I'll talk a little bit about the employment pod versus the commercial services pod and how they relate to each other. But fundamentally, what this is seeking to do is to zone this property in a way and provide utilities to this property such that when significant economic development opportunities come to this market, Garner will have a zoned and utility-ready site. And when it comes to economic development, and you can consult with Mr. Hodges, who's here, we've worked closely with him in bringing this plan forward. When it comes to recruiting the Fujifilms of the world, that recently was announced in Holly Springs and is developing over there, significant economic development investment that's being made not only by Holly Springs, but certainly the state. One of the things that those opportunities need are zoned and utility-ready sites. And so when you don't have zoning, when you don't have utilities, you don't make the list. I mean, that is just a fact of how economic development works. Those type of employers can't wait for a zoning process to come through, can't wait for utilities to be extended. And that's one of the reasons why Holly Springs was able to land Fuji, was because they had a business park that was already zoned. They had a business park that had utilities that were being provided to it. So it became an immediately attractive option for that type of economic employer. That's exactly what we are trying to do with this site. This is what Kurt and Gordon are trying to do with the site, and that is to put Garner on the map for these economic development opportunities. So from a big picture standpoint, that's what this case is all about. It's responding to the town's desire to see this site develop for economic development opportunities. It's creating a market opportunity so the town will be nimble and be attractive and aggressive when it comes to these employers, these large-scale employment opportunities when they come to the market. The commercial services pod exists in this way. We've worked closely not only with staff and not only with economic development, but we've also worked closely with the council. We have multiple meetings actually after our council public hearing to work directly with the council and crafting zoning conditions that provided some predictability associated with where certain uses were going to be, but also providing flexibility to make sure that as economic development opportunities presented themselves in this area, that would be the primary thrust of this site. And so the commercial services pod is really designed to do two things. One is to be responsive to your comprehensive plan, because the comprehensive plan does call for commercial services up along Cleveland School Road as well as Benson Road. Additionally, it's designed to provide kind of an attractive front door. We believe the commercial services pod, and we don't know exactly what's going to go in there right now. Again, this is designed to create an economic development opportunity, but the uses that are being designated for that commercial services pod, we believe will be highly complementary to the type of economic development opportunities that would want to come there. We believe they would be an asset not only to folks that are already driving past the site, folks that already live there, but also future employers. We believe will find that as an attractive asset, an amenity, for lack of a better way to put it, to their future employees so that they won't have to get out onto the streets and find other retail opportunities. So staff has done a great job. You know, this is a little bit different than you typically see because it's not associated with the master plan. Really, the genesis of that is because we don't know what is going to happen with the site. We're optimistic that when the zoning is applied to this site, consistent with what we have, that the uses are going to position the town to be able to seize those opportunities, and that when utilities are extended, it will further strengthen the attractiveness of this site. So I don't have much more to add to that. The comprehensive plan says this zoning request kind of hits it out of the park from a land use standpoint. I mean, the sub area recommendations talk about the very things that we are including in our permitted uses, recognizing we don't know exactly what's going to develop on the site. But again, in close consultation with your staff as well as with the council, the conditions that are for you tonight are designed to achieve the comprehensive plan and make Garner attractive for economic development. And so with that, we're here to answer any questions that you all may have and would, again, respectfully request you all's recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for staff and for for our applicant specifically? Mr. Carson?
I have some traffic study questions. Can you clarify, it would seem that the site with the controlled access brake would work better, but it doesn't say which access was ruled out by the Turnpike Authority. So is that site drive 3 that was eliminated?
Correct. Yeah, the scenario that lined up with the 540 ramp was ruled out by the Turnpike Authority.
Okay. And your TIA is based on 2023 data. Is there any update that would be recommended now that 540 is open and changes that whole pattern out there?
The traffic study actually took forecasts from NCDOT, assuming 540 is open, and that's what all the models were run based on. To develop the improvements and recommendations. So it does take into account 540, but from a DOT's traffic forecasting standpoint. Now it's not to say that at some point in the future, if particular use comes in, that there wouldn't be other considerations to look at this. But at this point, we're going off the best information that DOT and other agencies in the area have available.
And the site wasn't. You don't have any proposed designs, and I think I read where you kind of looked at different scenarios and you chose the one with heaviest traffic load to get your highest traffic numbers. So what were the options that you looked at as far as low, medium, high? What is driving that high-end traffic count?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great question. And so what we want to do, without having a specific user in mind here, we want to be as flexible as you can. I think you may have heard that word, flexible. And in order to do that, we want to make sure we have a good access plan. And so, and make sure we can accommodate whatever user may come in here. So what we did was we looked at 3 different uses for this, a general sort of light industrial use that has a little more traffic, but we looked at a manufacturing use, and we looked at, don't remember the third, but it was another use that was related to industrial or manufacturing, warehousing
Flex
use.
space?
It may have been flex space, and I'll look at it here in just a second, just to make sure I tell you. So what we did was we ran it all 3 ways, ran the trips for all 3 of those, and then we took the highest numbers out of each one of those scenarios. And then when we did that, we said, okay, we're taking the highest out of all of those different ways you could run it, and then we added 50% on top of it. And so what we're trying to do, like I said, is be cautious, but be flexible to make sure that when a user comes in here, kind of like Jason was saying, we need to make sure we're positioned in order to have everything set up for them, because they're going to want to know, do they have good access? That's one of the primary things they're going to want to know once they realize that we've got zoning utilities, how we get in and out. So we have to plan for that. And in order to plan for that, we need to make sure we have enough traffic assigned to this site to accommodate, whatever user may come in.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Boland?
I imagine you realize that you're not the first community that wants to create an attraction parcel. an incubator area, a development park, which has enough flexibility to attract whatever. And the question is, what is the whatever? Which probably led to the comments from the council about overly broad vagueness in terms of the proposal at this point in time. How do you get over that to develop more support for the project? Not that you don't have it here in this room tonight. I'm just saying, how do you get over that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that was definitely a question that came up at our public hearing. We actually met with a subset of the council after our public hearing to further fine-tune those uses, to further narrow the uses, to make sure that the vision that's embodied in the comprehensive plan, the opportunity that's recognized through economic development, is reflected in the conditions. So the conditions that are actually in your packet took that feedback into account and made adjustments and then represented that to the council before it was sent to you all for review.
Okay.
So that was definitely something we talked about. We actually went to public hearing and council said, you know what, we're not ready to send you along because of that very reason. We want to make sure that we really kind of narrow in on the types of uses that we want in this employment area to ensure that while we have flexibility, we also have predictability. And so the conditions that are before you were worked through the council process to ensure that we're kind of striking that right balance.
Okay. I'm glad you had that conversation because, like I said, there are many communities that have tried to do this.
Sure.
Not that they've failed. Many have succeeded, especially when there's a new transportation vector involved.
Right.
So.
Yep. No, it's an excellent observation and certainly something that your council is very aware of and is fine-tuned in on.
Okay.
Ms. Bishop or Ms. Phillips? None? Any comments? Ms. Bishop?
I know there was a comment about the amount of stories for this site. Is there like an exact amount, like minimum or maximum that this area would allow?
So we haven't made any commitments with respect to the zoning in mandating 2 stories or 8 stories, whatever that case may be. Again, because we don't know who the ultimate user is going to be, and we don't want to put something in place that could theoretically prohibit an opportunity that we would want to see there, and then end up having to go through a zoning process because somebody wants to be a 1-story campus because of their particular use, and we've committed to 2. So we don't have that as part of the case in a desire to be nimble and be flexible when opportunities present themselves.
Got it. Understood. Thank you.
Sure thing.
I don't have anything at this time.
No questions. I just do appreciate that you took the time to look over the permitted uses and did cross some of these out because they're definitely not things that a few of these would want to see and go in that area, especially given recent development on 42 that house very similar projects that have been crossed out. So I don't think that there's an additional need for those, and for the vibe that we're trying to bring to the area, I would love to see something that's going to serve the community rather than serve other needs necessarily. Let's just leave it to that.
That's well put.
So I am excited to see what down the road what it gets narrowed down to even further. So we'll see what happens from there.
Any other comments? I had a couple questions that, in response to the public hearing, there were some questions about apartments. There were like two or three questions about apartments, and the response to number 13, from the question aside from the commercial, how many houses are proposed, and then the response was proposing mostly but non-residential with the potential for apartments. So was this before
Yes.
you met with council?
Yep. So there is no residential with this proposal. This sub area, the sub area that we are in doesn't call for residential, which is why it is not part of the proposal. There are portions of this focus area kind of towards the back that are recommended for some residential, but that is not part of this plan because, again, where we are located, there is no residential recommended.
All right, I just want to clarify that.
Yep.
And also, there was another question about chances there will be sit-down restaurants, question mark. And the response was possibly, but not a great chance because population in the area will not meet the restaurant demand. That was question number 27. But in our proposed uses, we're saying, restaurant, sit-down establishment is one of your proposals. So I guess, is it just because the residential hasn't come yet that was a response? Not that there wouldn't be those types of uses, but.
Yeah, we're certainly leaving open the possibility. We think restaurants of some sort would be attractive, as I mentioned earlier, as kind of amenities to the employers that are going to be located on this site. So that's one of the reasons, as you note very well, that's why restaurants with sit-down opportunities are included as a possibility along that commercial services pod to be able to facilitate those type of uses.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I wasn't missing something
Nope, you're spot on.
from that, especially considering that we are right at a 540 connection, and as people travel, those are things that people stop to do. And as you also have listed, hotel, motel in your list of proposed uses.
Absolutely.
Right. So, yeah, I kind of also had the same big question about the vagueness of it, not knowing much about what this is. But I'm assuming this might be a question for staff that we are going. I mean, we would see if something is being proposed based on this zoning change. We are going to see that and a site plan or master plan or not. Would we ever see that?
Special use permits don't come through to y'all like they used to years ago. So chances are not.
So if we approve this, we aren't going to see what's going to happen here. It's going to go right to council. So those are some things to think about as a planning commission. Considering that the existing zoning is R30 and.
But we just won't see it as long as whatever is proposed comes through under the new zoning, right? So it would have to be something that's in these 15 uses that are outlined.
Yes.
And so as long as it's within the guidelines that we vote on tonight, then we won't see it.
Then we
But
won't see it.
if it's something outside of that, it'll have to come back to us for rezoning.
Okay, all right. So everybody's aware of both of those kind of things. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
We'll just have to go to the council meeting.
Yeah,
We-
just sit on that side. We'd have to go to the council meeting.
We will be one of the public, right, for comment. I don't want to sneak anything in. Not that I'm saying you would do such a thing.
Fair.
But I think it's really important, especially that, when we don't see that, it's really sometimes hard for us to let go and think that that's going to be the case. But we trust our planning. All right. Are there any other questions or comments, for additional discussion for us? Is there a motion? Wait, I have to go to the public. Are there any public comments for or against? I moved quick. Mr. Hodges is coming to be greeted.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Hodges, Assistant Town Manager. Nate Groove, our Economic Development Director, is traveling on business and could not be here tonight. He was going to be here to lend support towards this request. I think because of the unique nature of this and some of the questions that I've heard raised by the commission members, it would just be appropriate just to share with you what an important site this is to our town. This will enable us and our economic development team to have what we call product. We have entitled product or land that we can respond to requests that come in through Wake County Economic Development and the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina. We have requests coming in every week and we do not have locations in town that are suitably approved and have the zoning in place to allow the type of job creation centers that we envisioned in our comprehensive plan. We've been working with this development team since the spring of 2022, so it's 2.5 years. They've been extremely patient and extremely understanding. As Garner has worked through all the challenges related to growth, they've been with us through the development of the comprehensive plan. They followed it closely. They probably know it as well as many of our staff and others do. And so they have taken the time to purposely walk through an exercise knowing the importance of this site to the town. And so for all those reasons, we feel like this is a really good opportunity for us, but we do understand that it is a little unique for you not to have some of the detail you're accustomed to seeing. As the development team mentioned to you, part of that is the unique situation here of getting utilities to the site, and the entitlement is another step, gets a step towards the ability for the developers to partner and help get utilities here. So that is another burden that the developer is taking on behalf of the future benefit of the town in working out the unique utilities to get to this site. So again, we've got a uniquely positioned piece of property at the interchange of 540. We're working with the development team who really understands the needs of the community and have worked with us to help us achieve something that I think is going to be really good for a future of our employment centers. And I think it's important also to note that while this one's a little bit unique, this is the first of 6 focus areas that were identified in our comprehensive plan. And so what we hope to do is, when necessary for these type processes to come through, help you feel more comfortable with the unique nature of these when they are purposefully being designed to help us facilitate the growth of those focus areas and other unique places in town. So if you've got questions about the process, whether this is part of tonight's hearing or whether it's follow-ups after that, Economic Development Team will be glad to come back, speak to you about those things. We'll also be glad to come back and report out to you on things that may happen here so that you are aware of things that may be moving forward once the rezoning is approved. If there's any questions you have for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
I really appreciate that information, and I can't speak for the whole commission, but I would be very, very appreciative if Economic Development did come back and give us updated information about this. Since we would not be seeing a site plan, it would be helpful to make sure that they are always also still in agreement with the changes.
We'll be happy to do that.
And that's if the commission is in. Okay, they have all nodded their heads, yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Okay, now, are there any other? No. Do we have a motion to approve the motion on the floor?
I will move that the Planning Commission accept the consistency statement drafted herein as our own written recommendation regarding the consistency of the request with the town's adopted land use plans, and recommend approval of case number CZ 24002 to the town council.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, and I will call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
Mariah Bishop,
Aye.
Ralph Carson,
Aye.
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jihan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips,
Aye.
Michael Voyland.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you so much. We have passed our last item on the agenda. I think that's the last item on the agenda. Yes, it is. Thank you all so much for being in attendance. You're welcome. Stay if you would like. Now we move to our report from the planning department. Mr. Triesenberg.
First, I just wanted to mention that the council did declare October Community Planning Month in the town of Garner. It's the first time that we've put forth a proclamation to that regard since I've been here. But we do want to do what we can to start raising the profile of planning and what we do. And so it was nice, though, to have that proclamation read. It recognized both the contributions of staff as well as planning commission members and other volunteers. So just wanted to put that out there into the universe that this is kind of our special little month of the year. As planners, to that end, we actually do have our statewide conference later this week. So a few of us will be over in Greenville from Wednesday through Friday at the State Planning Conference to collaborate with our colleagues and share and learn. And highlights always include our ethics seminars and our legal updates from the School of Government, amongst many other things. So we're very excited for that. And in terms of activity since your last meeting, there's not been a whole lot. There was an annexation that was processed on Timber Drive East for the office professional park that's under construction there between 50 and White Oak. There had been a couple of buildings there for a few years, and now there's a few more going up. So those were getting ready to open, so we've annexed those into the town. And then the project, the other Tier 1 rezoning at 3412, 3508 Benson Road, that was annexed and zoned at the meeting just this past week. So that was approved by the council, and we brought that area into our jurisdiction. Just a few notes on the staffing side. I had to go back and check when Thomas was going up and doing his presentation. I had to check and think back as to when his promotion was in effect, but I think I'd reported that to you at a previous meeting. But if for some reason I did not, Thomas has been promoted from planning technician to planner 1. And so that was effective back in August, and maybe we didn't because we didn't have a meeting in September. So that might have been my failure to introduce him appropriately earlier in the meeting. And then just in the past week, Joe Linsky was promoted from planner 1 to planner 2. And he has been in the development review side of things. So you don't see him as often, but that is another promotion that was made. So we do have a few positions to backfill, and then we also have a couple of vacancies. Ashley Harris, she and her husband made a move to Pennsylvania, to the Pittsburgh area. So she departed a couple of weeks ago, and then most recently, this is the last week for Allison Jones. Allison has been with us for about 7.5, getting close to 8 years. And so she is taking an opportunity in the private sector and is going to be trying that out. So we do have a number of positions to fill. We've actually had the senior planner, Ashley's position, advertised. We have interviews later this month for that. We've also been advertising Thomas's former position as the planning technician. We concluded the interviews for that position today. Right now we have ads out for the planner 1, that was Joe's old position. The planner 2, which was added this year, that's in Aaron's group. And then also Allison's position as the development review manager, that is also currently out there. So if you know of any planning, landscape architect, poli-sci kinds of people who are interested in development, we've got things at all different spectrums. So definitely refer them over and have them take a look. But that's all I have for you.
That's a lot of moving changes.
Yes, it happens every so often. We're having a little bit of a shuffle.
I think I've been here a couple times with that. Mr. Boylan?
Yeah, Jeff or whomever, a couple of questions. All the activity, moving of earth and trees at 50 and 70, what is that about?
At 50, oh, that's the new bridge.
The new bridge?
Yes.
They're replacing that bridge?
Yes, they are finally getting started with that. The planning actually for that took place many years ago. For those of you who remember Het Patel, who occasionally comes back here. He's currently with City of Raleigh with Go Raleigh Transit. He was our transportation planner several years ago. Yeah, and we've worked together on kind of planning for that bridge, and it's now finally coming to fruition. So the existing bridge is staying in place, and they're constructing the new bridge next to it on the west side.
Okay, because it looked pretty substantial in terms of the kind of, not only equipment, but the the timber and so on for the temporary.
Yes, and if you remember on the north side, there was the loop there, and there were like 3 or 4 houses in there. All those were purchased as part of that project because they're going to need that area to redo the intersections that are associated with the bridge.
Second question. When we reviewed the VA clinic, here I go again. The review that we approved had the little convenience store gas station remaining. That's gone. And they are starting to remove their construction trailers. What's going to go in that corner?
Nothing as of this point in time. Since the approval did go through, they didn't own that gas station at the time, but they have since, I think, acquired it. So no, it hasn't been incorporated into the site. It still remains to be seen, but I'm sure something will be proposed at some point in the future, but that would need to come back.
Is it possible that it could be eaten up by the transportation improvements at Rand?
So I know there was a little bit of right-of-way that had to be dedicated for some of the improvements, but it was not, there's enough of a site there that it wouldn't take. It was just a little bit of additional.
My last thing is personal. Some of you know I play in a band, and we have 2 upcoming dates in Garner. I just want to make you aware of. November 11th, Saturday, we'll be playing at Mojo's from 7 to 10. It's my duo form of the band. Ralph has heard us. And on December 6th, we'll be playing at the Avisboro Restaurant at 8:30. In case you're not doing anything.
And we should all go to cheer them on.
That's great. Thank you.
I just wanted to give a quick update on the Affordable Housing Task Force. The last meeting, we had a presentation from the town of Apex on their affordable housing initiatives. We're currently working on definitions, working on baselines, and we're working towards, I think, January recommendations to council is kind of the time frame that we're looking at right now. Got a lot of work ahead of us, but staff has done a great job. Miss Joseph helped me and sent a lot of data my way to mine through. So, but thank you very much. And so our next meeting's in a couple of weeks, I guess.
Okay, great. Thank you again for continuing to serve on that. I think having your comments about that every time, specifically related to that, is really important. We've had these comments before, but having someone in that committee to bring that kind of statement to our review is important.
One of the things that is very beneficial for myself, and hopefully sharing that here, but we had the developers come in here tonight, and they're proposing affordable housing, and you're starting to see the developers through conversations with staff and council and talking about, we'd like to get that as a goal. It's not written down anywhere yet, but they seem to be receptive. I mean, they're in at 3%, which is matching on the high side of what we've seen so far. So that's positive, and hopefully they'll work a little bit more on some of the AMI percentages. But it's a step in the right direction, and it's going to be a lot of work for years to come to get that all flushed out and get to where we need to be.
And hopefully higher.
Pardon me?
I have a
Hopefully
question,
higher
Jeff.
percentages.
Is there an update on Bojangles?
They have submitted their annexation petition, and so yeah, things are starting to move along for that. I think it's still probably like a year away at least, but yeah, things are starting to move now. I think it took them a while to get some things worked out with DOT, but they've gotten their approvals now.
All right, and then, Philip, just a reminder, I will not be here next month due to the meeting being rescheduled to Tuesday. I have a prior commitment, so I won't be here for November.
Yes, thank you, yes, because that Monday is Veterans Day and we will be off, so yes, next month,
We will be
Tuesday.
watching you at the.
Okay.
Jeff, is there any update that you can share on WakeMed? Anything moving there?
It is in review. It is actually on the schedule to be discussed with our internal technical review committee on Thursday. So that will officially conclude the first round of review. So it's moving along.
Okay, good.
That's why I had that on my calendar. I couldn't remember why I had 2 planning commission dates back to back.
Because y'all voted for Tuesday. I was pushing for the third Monday, but y'all said Tuesday.
You sure I was here when that was done?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Any other? All right, well, we will call our meeting adjourned.